Getting there. All right. So now we are live on YouTube. So I will call to order the Monday, August 3rd meeting, regular city council meeting at 7:05 p.m. I apologize about the delay. So the first item on the agenda is a moment of meditation and silence. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Chelsea, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kelsey?
Are you calling me? Here,
Mr. Kelsey?
still here.
Okay. I'm having trouble hearing. Ms. West?
Here.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anybody.
You're pretty delayed, Chelsea.
Can I start over?
Let's switch to your phone.
Mr. Kelsey?
Still here.
Ms. West?
Here.
Mr. Moskin?
Are you able to call in with your phone? Really?
Uh-oh. I lost
Chelsea's
it. Oh, there you are.
audio sounds quite soft.
And
Yeah.
And-
Having a
It's
bit-
showing mute. It's showing mute on my end, Chelsea. There, try that.
yeah, Andrew, don't you usually use your phone? Because that's muted.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Cares?
Here,
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Present.
Okay, appreciate you hanging in for that. The next item on the agenda is the approval of council minutes from the regular city council meeting of July 6th and the special city council meeting of June 22nd. Was there any questions on that? Can you turn that? Oh. Yeah, leave it off.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, sorry, I wanted to make sure this was working. So the next item on the agenda is communications. We did have a letter from the Department of Public Safety acknowledging the receipt of the ordinance 2020-22 to impose the additional $5 local motor vehicle permissive tax that you all should have received. And the request from Daniel Tudor for 2 signs on Main Street that state the bicycles may use full lanes. So we may discuss that particular issue coming up, but I believe that Mr. Finney has filled us in the past in regards to that and the signage across the city. So we'll address that. possibly at our next committee meeting, but I will defer now to our delegations from the public. Judge Doherty, I appreciate you hanging on with us as we're having these technical difficulties, but I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you all giving me a few minutes of your time. I understand how difficult this process is. We're back to normal pretty much in court now, but for at least a couple months, it was Zoom meetings, Zoom hearings, Zoom sentencings. It was very difficult. So I am Judge Becky Doherty. I have served as a Portage County Common Pleas judge since January of 2015. I appreciate the support I received then and hope that that support will continue into this next election. Experience and commitment are vital to effectively do this job, and that is what I bring to this office. Judges are probably the least known candidates on any ballot at any given time. I still get calls from my mom in Summit County asking who to vote for because she doesn't know anything about the judges in Summit County. And quite frankly, I want to change that. I want everyone to know who they're voting for and what qualifications bring them to that job. And that's why it's so important that you find out the qualifications and the capability of the candidates. I handle close to 700 criminal felony cases a year, over 300 civil cases. And as an assistant prosecutor for over 22 years, I handled and prosecuted over 22 death penalty cases. I tried over 200 jury trials, including aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, rape, drug trafficking, organized crime. And the experience that I have in the courtroom allows me to handle the most complex criminal and civil cases in a manner that's fair to everyone. As most people, and I know you guys are all aware, the substance abuse epidemic is unfortunately alive and well, and it's been further aggravated by the pandemic. The isolation, the fear, the anxiety, and the inability to attend in-person meetings has really caused relapse and overdose deaths to rise. That's something that has just been something that my probation department especially has really struggled with, as I have. I started my HOPE drug court soon after I took office. We were certified in March of 2017 by the Ohio Supreme Court. And through the last few months, we have watched particularly the last few months, we have watched those with addiction struggle so much against the odds to maintain sobriety. Our treatment team, if you aren't aware, for HOPE Court includes members from Coleman Professional, Town Hall 2, Compass Recovery, Hope Village, and the Adult Probation Department. Our program is a minimum 16 months with a stringent counseling and accountability requirement that prepares them for life after court. My probation department all calls it life court because quite frankly, that is our goal, to get them prepared for what they can do with their lives after they are sober and after drug court is over. The constant contact they have and the responsibility that we require makes our program unique and successful. HOPE Court actually won the Celebrate Portage Public Health Initiative Award in 2019 due to my team's dedication and commitment to the program. We also started the Paris Work Release Program, which was initiated by me, Sabrina Christian Bennett, and Sheriff Doak. That it was really designed to give select inmates, those who are eligible at the jail, the opportunity to work while they're incarcerated, to save money, pay fines, prepare for housing upon their release, pay child support, and keep that job upon their release from jail. And that's worked out, unfortunately, until COVID hit, it worked out really well. Now we're trying to get back on track. The problem obviously was having inmates be able to leave the jail, go to work and come back in during the initial part of the crisis. So now we're getting back on track and we have transportation for them. They are able to go to Paris work and come back to the facility. And then once they are finished their sentence, that job is still there for them. Working with other agencies in our community is what it takes to solve problems and offer real solutions. And as a judge, I certainly feel that that is my responsibility to do that. If any of you have ever been in my courtroom, I love my job, I love the law, and I will continue to work hard to make our community safer and healthier. Drug court is my happy place. I can tell you, I think Mayor Seaman knows that that is something that is near and dear to my heart. I knew I was going to start a drug court when I took the bench, and it has been something that has really been remarkable to see. If there's nothing else, if anyone has any questions, certainly feel free to ask. And if you ever are able to, I would love for all of you to join and come to one of our drug court graduations. I think our next one is September 24th. I will send out a notice if you're interested. It's really something to see these folks give their presentation that they are required to give in order to graduate. And it's really something to see. They talk about their struggles, but their successes, which is what's important. They are required to have a job, to live on their own. There are so many requirements that we have in order to graduate, and it's very impressive to hear them tell their story. So again, thank you for your time. If anyone has any questions, certainly let me know. But I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Judge Doherty, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Have you seen the video today from the U.S. District Judge in New Jersey?
Yes. I saw a clip of it. Broke my heart.
Yes. Yeah, it is kind of disturbing how, you can make public private information like that and put people like yourself at risk. So.
Well, I will tell you, until just a couple years ago, judges were not considered, law enforcement has that provision that their information, their property ownership and everything was not public record and wasn't online. Up until a couple years ago, actually about a year and a half ago, judges were not included in that. So my address and my home, everything, even my daughter's home that I co-signed on, that was listed and visible publicly. A few years ago, someone tried to break into my house. So I take that very seriously, obviously. And I was really glad that the legislature changed that. But it's frightening. And what I saw this morning, she, that poor judge, but she was able to at least speak publicly about it and let other judges know the dangers if they aren't aware, certainly.
Okay, thanks.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, great.
Yes.
And Judge Doherty, thank you so much. It's been really a neat opportunity to watch all, the people graduate from drug court and be successful. And, with all the struggles that people have, just that simple thing really means a lot to them. So thank you so much for helping coordinate that.
And
Actually, it's interesting. One of my first drug court graduates is the person who works at Paris, who coordinates the Paris Work Release Program with us. So it's kind of like that all came full circle. She graduated. She's been clean and sober for over 4 years. And now she has a supervisory position at Paris, and she works with the sheriff and the rest of us on the Paris Work Release Program. So she actually supervises those folks who are transported from the jail to work. So again, it's kind of, it's something that has worked out incredibly well, and I'm really proud of it and proud of them.
yeah, so if you have any information on that drug court, please send it around. I attended the graduation out in Summit County a couple of years ago, and it's an experience for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I will definitely send you over an invite to the next one. Like I said, I think it's September 24th, so I will let you know for sure. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for hanging in there and putting up with all the technical issues on my end.
Oh, I'm used to it, believe me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is the report of officials. You should have received the fire department report, police department, utilities, and one thing that Amy was able to get for us all, I believe that was sent around to everybody, was the Coleman report that should be coming in hopefully monthly now. But it's been an ongoing discussion with, a couple of us and the Coleman representatives. So is there any questions regarding those? All right, do we have a motion to accept?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the report of committees. Committee meetings will be August 10th at 5:30. First up is utilities, Mr. Moskin.
At this point, there'll be nothing for next week. Just one thing today.
Thank you. Information systems, Ms. Wood.
There will be one thing for tonight, and so far, nothing for next week.
Next is planning, Mr. Karas.
3 items on the agenda tonight. I'm not sure, I don't have anything planned for a meeting. Unless something comes up, we'll go without a meeting this month.
We may have one item at least for planning. Committee of the Whole will be on August 17th at 7 p.m. Stand by again for that township meeting. We'll see when that might be. If it is the 17th, will take place before. We may also reschedule Committee of the Whole, all depending again, but I'll keep everyone informed on how that plays out. So again, as of right now, it is Monday, August 17th at 7 p.m. Next up is Public Health and Safety, Ms. Michael.
Yes, we have a few items on the agenda this evening. I'm not sure, but I would imagine we're probably having a committee meeting. I don't have anything at this time, but we usually do have stuff that come in last minute with this. So that's really about it.
Streets and Sidewalks, Mr. Harper.
I have 2 items on the agenda this evening, and I do believe we will be having a committee meeting next week.
Personnel, Mr. Kalki.
Nothing on the agenda for tonight, and no plans for a meeting next week.
Next up is Community and Economic Development, Ms. West.
One thing on the agenda for this evening and nothing as of yet for the next committee.
Okay. Any cemetery updates from the past meeting?
I will defer to Mr. Moscom tonight. I was unable to make the meeting last week due to a work conflict, so.
There was Jason Kentner, the architect, came and presented several different things. We'll also be at the next cemetery meeting, which will be at the end of September. So he took up quite a bit. And the other thing that was discussed was going into what Andrew mentioned, the townships, trustees, and the city council meeting at a proposed date later this month.
Okay.
That is all for the cemetery at this point.
Yeah, and I can, the Kentner, I attended that meeting too, but the Kentner illustrations were they were interesting. So if council's interested, we could share those with council too, because I think be something for you all to worth looking at. With that, we will move on to the first reading of ordinances. As long as Chelsea's microphone is working and the computer's working, the first item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-75.
An ordinance accepting a donation for the Ravenna City Police Department of $2,500 from an anonymous donor and declaring an emergency.
Okay, and just to check, can everybody hear her okay?
Yes.
Okay.
She's
Perfect.
coming through clear now.
Okay, thank you. This is Public Health and Safety, Ms. Michael. I think you're muted.
Sorry, I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You're
Okay.
coming through clear.
Okay, sorry. I thought I hit unmute and I was talking and I realized I wasn't. So anyways, as basically the ordinance reads, it's accepting a donation from an anonymous donor.
Any questions on this? If there are none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second,
Is that Harper?
I believe it was Rob.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to pass?
So moved.
Second,
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-76.
An ordinance accepting a donation for the Ravenna City Fire Department of $2,500 from an anonymous donor and declaring an emergency.
This is also Miss Michael. Anything else different?
Nope.
about-
Nope, it reflects the previous one as well.
Thanks. Is there any questions or concerns on this? And hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to pass.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second,
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-77.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the Ohio EMS grant award in the sum of $3,580.78 from the Ohio Department of Public Safety and declaring an emergency.
This was sponsored by Public Health and Safety, Ms. Michael.
Yes, this also was discussed in committee. I don't know that there was really any questions about this. It just basically what it says.
We should have gotten, there was an exhibit attached to that too, but this is a yearly grant.
Right, yes.
Any questions from council on this? If there are none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And finally, do we have a motion to pass?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-78.
An ordinance to transfer $6,708 from the Capital Improvements Fund to the Water Fund and declaring an emergency.
This is sponsored by Streets and Sidewalks, Mr. Harper.
Yes, those funds were used to repair sidewalks during the Hazen Avenue Water Project. So we're just going to take them out of CI and return them to the water fund.
Any questions? Mr. Harper? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Karas,
I have dogs, sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And finally, do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
so moved,
Second.
Ms. West,
yes,
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-79.
An ordinance appropriating the sum. An ordinance appropriating the sum of $15,000 from the general fund to increase the light maintenance line item for traffic light maintenance and declaring an emergency.
This is sponsored by Streets and Sidewalks. Mr. Harper.
Yes, this is an additional $15,000 appropriation. Some additional work needed to be completed. I went over the list in committee meetings, but if anybody has any questions or wants to know what the work is to be done, I can go over that again.
Is there any questions on this? Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
second,
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
second,
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that item is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-80.
There was a typographical error. City has been changed to distribution systems. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids according to law for the installation of the new water meters throughout the distribution system and declaring an emergency.
And this was sponsored by Utilities, Mr. Moskin.
Yes, this is to get bids from various contractors. Hopefully there'll be more than one for this meter purchase and installation project. And when I say any type of paraphernalia, flanges, things to do with the repeater system, that's proposed to go that direction. And hopefully those bids will be back possibly the next 4 to 6 weeks to proceed with this project.
Are there any questions for Mr. Moskin on that? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So move.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So move.
second,
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
And finally, a motion to pass.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael.
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-81.
An ordinance authorizing the certification of delinquent mowing and water and sewer collection bills to the county auditor in order to allow for the placement of the certified amount on the real estate property tax list and duplicate against the property served by the mowing and/or water and sewer connection collection services and declaring an emergency.
This is also sponsored by Utilities. Mr. Moskin.
Yes. This is for when it's pertaining to mowing for unkept yards or city property pertaining to businesses that haven't kept up their portion. When it comes to water bills, delinquent water bills that property owners, residential and or commercial, have failed to pay for their water bills throughout the year, that would be turned over on their taxes.
Any questions on that? If there are none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
yes,
Mr. Harper.
yes,
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
yes,
Mr. Harper.
yes,
And finally, a motion to pass the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
yes,
Mr. Harper.
yes,
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-82.
An ordinance appropriating the sum of $20,000 from the water fund to increase line 670.675.56801 for fire hydrant replacement and/or repairs and declaring an emergency.
All right, and this is also utilities, I believe. Mr. Moskin?
Yes, that would be to increase the fund for fire hydrants, because there are several throughout the distribution system that are problematic. And at this time, I'd like to know if our finance director would have it nailed down exactly which part of water that would be coming from. But these hydrants do need to be changed as soon as possible at an expedited rate, so problems will be alleviated.
Yeah, I think Mr. Finney explained it pretty well in detail during our committee meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, the funds will be coming out of distribution. Sorry,
Okay.
Brian, I stole your thunder.
yeah, I mean, no, that's fine. I mean, yeah, it even has the account line in there so that the 670 is the water fund. The 675 is part of the water capital improvement part of the water fund.
Is there any other questions on this? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
yes,
Harper.
yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Calfee,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
yes,
And a motion to pass?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-83.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Rodel D. Moore for One Nation for umpire sourcing and scheduling services for Ravenna Parks and Recreation softball games and declaring an emergency.
And this is sponsored by Planning. Mr. Karas?
Yeah, so this is just so we can get an arrangement with this company so that they can provide us with umpires for our softball games coming up in the fall.
There are teams available if anybody's still available, if anybody's interested. Are there any questions regarding this? Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-84.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for a grant through Ohio North Youth Soccer for the recreational soccer program and declaring an emergency.
And this was also sponsored by Planning Committee. Mr. Karas?
Yeah, so for the upcoming soccer program, this is a grant that provides up to 50% and up to $500. So we have a budget established at $1,000. If we get the grant, it'll pay for half of our budget for the soccer program.
Any other questions regarding this?
No.
Well, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to pass?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-85.
An ordinance to appropriate $7,000 for the appraisal of the Emerald Lake Reserve property to assist in the application of 2 grants to gain the acquisition of the property and declaring an emergency.
And this was sponsored by Planning. Mr. Karas?
Okay, so this one's a little more involved. We have the opportunity through a couple of grants to raise some money to purchase this property owned currently by R.R. Wellington. So what we're doing tonight is simply appropriating the funds and allowing the city to go ahead with these 2 grants so that, because part of the grants is that we need an appraisal to see what the value of the property is. It's a requirement of the grants. So tonight, all we're doing is approving the funds. So I don't know if we'll need that much. That's how much our consultant says it'd be between $5,000 and $7,000. So if it's approved tonight, then they can go forward with the grant application. If we're successful, the prospect is that we could, through these grants, acquire this property without costing the city any money. So that's the best possible outcome. Worst case, we don't get the grants, or we decide we don't want the property at a later date and we're out the money we allocate tonight for the appraisal. So it's the first step, and then it is time dependent. The grants will be due early, either late this month or early next month. So there wouldn't really be time to wait another council meeting. We missed the deadline for those grants.
And Mr. Calfee, can I just ask you real quick? You mentioned that has the school, or did the school, have you worked with EnviroScience before?
Yes, we did not take a contract with them, but we worked with them on a project. So I'm familiar with the company, yes.
Okay. Was there any other questions regarding?
I wondered,
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. Has the appraisal company been selected? Do we know who that is, or is the city just going to select a commercial appraiser for it?
This has to be a state certified that's familiar with the OPWC appraisal process because it's going to be appraised as green space. The restrictions on the property are extensive, and it definitely is something that I think needs more consideration, at least more discussion as to whether or not the city wants to move forward and acquire this. There's a lot of different criteria to the scoring methodology through NRAC that personally, I've sat on that board, I've scored a lot of these applications, and I do not feel like this property will score high with that methodology. I'd be happy to share with anybody who has any questions, the process and a lot of the things that they look for. But I do believe that if we wanted to look for a property to use these types of funds for an acquisition, there are other properties that would be better suited and score better on a competitive application.
Do you think that it would be average or a little bit below possibly on the score?
I believe it would be probably below average. You would have to provide several different plant and native animal species that you would be protecting, how you would restore it to its natural habitat to be conducive to those plants and those species. You cannot obviously put man-made structures on the property. If you were to do walking trails, it would have to be in its natural state. The fact that there's a gas well on there concerns me. There's the possibility of contamination. You may not ever be able to restore it to its natural state. These are all things that would be looked at in depth. The fact that the grant application is within a month or so is also a concern because there's a lot of steps to getting all of the required documentation attached to these grant applications that I would think if they haven't even done the appraisal yet, it would be very difficult to even do the grant application if that deadline is so soon. The NRAC board I sat on typically reviewed applications January, February timeframe.
Cheryl, did you reach out to Judy and talk with her about any of this?
I have not had a chance yet. I did state at the last meeting when we discussed this, my concerns regarding the restrictions and things like that, but I would be more than happy to speak with Judy.
Was there anything you can add, or Mayor, on some of the concerns around the gas well or anything else around there? And then also, just to clarify what Rob said at the beginning, if we were to move forward with what's on the agenda tonight, does this lock us in any way to the property, and potential problems that might be there, if there are any? I don't want to.
I have talked with Chris Craycroft about another matter. that I will talk about later on. But she's looking at a similar grant, and she told me it was due in January. That there was no rush on the thing that she was looking at. I'm not an expert in these grants. In terms of, they're designed to protect natural state of properties. So it's very limited in what you can do with them after the fact. That much I'm sure of. And Cheryl knows more about this than anybody else in the room at this time that I'm aware of. I really can't add much more to that. I don't want to, I think one of the things we need to know is whether we can do some of the other things that Judy had in mind with this property if it is severely limited in what you can do with it.
Even another concern would be the railroad tracks that border it. As far as my understanding with the Clean Ohio funds, you cannot even erect a fence because it's supposed to be a natural resource property, and something that if you want to go and bird watch or look at the natural species of the property, but you couldn't even erect a fence along the railroad tracks. And I feel like that's a liability for the city.
Well, just to be clear here, this is an opportunity that kind of approached the city. It wasn't like the city was looking for park property. And the enticement was that working through EnviroScience and Neil Heff, who we met with and I considered to be the expert in putting this together, it would only be advantageous to the city if we acquired the property at no cost, and that's why the grants are in place. I don't know for sure. I mean, I haven't looked this up. I don't know when the grants are due. So I wish he were here to explain that process tonight. But it may be if we don't act tonight, we'll have to wait a year or whatever. I don't know how often these grants are offered. It is the intent of the city not to develop the property, but to leave it as is, as a walking park, green space, as it were. Again, it was going to cost the city if there was, and if there was any kind of environmental impact. I don't know the history of this property, but I don't know that they're, other than the, I think they're gas wells. Other than those, I don't know what other impact there would be other than people simply dumping stuff on the property. So the real question I think council needs to answer tonight is, do they want to put down their, ante up to $7,000 on the prospect that this is some, I mean, let's face it, if what Cheryl says is true and it doesn't score well on these grants, we won't get any money, the city won't proceed, we're out $7,000 or whatever the cost is for the appraisal. If we don't approve the money, we're just out, just opted out, at least until the next round of grants, assuming, the parties involved, environmental science and R.R. Wellington are willing to go through it again. I'm not necessarily advocating for it. My personal opinion is if the city is not able to, put an amount of $7,000 on the table to investigate this, then we're kind of, what are we willing to put out there for the prospect of a potential acquisition of land like this? It's never without problems when we go down this road, but tonight we're just at the beginning stages and we can opt out of this deal at any time with, of course, the expense we're asked to be authorizing tonight.
Mr. Finney, can you speak to the letter that you wrote earlier? I believe it was February in the year, about the property. And I think it was kind of in favor of what we're talking about tonight. And then also, how either you or the mayor, how often has something like this happened in the past with a park coming along or a potential park? But can you talk, Mr. Finney, just first about the letter you wrote and your findings or your initial investigation, if there was any, about the property?
Sure. When Pat Jeffers and I walked the site, we were pleased that the site wasn't contaminated with tires and vehicles and party spots, so to speak. I had heard people rode their four-wheelers and recreated already on the property, but it was actually minus a couple vehicles that had gotten stuck in the mud and left there. The site was pretty clean, and it would not be difficult to create a natural border along the railroad to keep vehicles from driving onto the property, such as cutting trees down and letting trees lay, that sort of thing, rather than building a fence. It would be difficult to get to the CSX railroad because it's a wet area. The CSX is on the south. Because of a wet area that borders that rail, and the rail is also elevated to some degree, it would be easier to actually get to the Norfolk and Southern on the north side. The gas well, I'm not a gas well person. The gas well to the west side of the property near the Wahoo Ditch is active. The other gas wells were permitted but had not been drilled. There is a Portage County sanitary sewer that runs in essence underneath the pond and heads to our wastewater plant. So in some ways, we could say that there's sewer on the property. That's, I understand what Cheryl's saying. And in my 20 years, there's been discussions of donating property to the city, but there was always some ask in return. So looking at this property, potentially very inexpensive, $7,000 or whatnot, it seems like it's worth going after the property. For whatever reason, the property's been for sale for several years and it hasn't been purchased or utilized in another manner. It is zoned residential R4. I believe that zoning was created specifically for the apartments that were built. There was a second phase, since hence the land has been cleared along that second phase. And that was pretty much when the economy changed directions in 2005, 6, 7, something like that. So I look at it as an opportunity, and we'll cross our fingers and hope it works out for us.
Right.
I do question whether their stated value is accurate or not. To me, the price that they stated just seems way too high. Which, appraisal would show that.
Right. With the railroad tracks, I mean, I know the hike and bike trail, the railroad tracks are right next to that as well.
Woods too.
Yeah, there's a lot of places where, you're close to that. So that part I don't see as being that much more of a liability than what we already, have. But I also agree with Bob. I think it's an opportunity that we should at least see if it's, doable or not. I know we went with this on Cleveland Road with that property. And I think there was another one, Bob, I'm trying to think. I know the one on Cleveland Road that there was some real big concern with.
Amy, the park across from the Big Dog.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember.
Brownfield, and brownfield money was used to clean the properties up. This is a different program. This is Clean Ohio. And I'm not opposed to trying to acquire this property. I'm just trying to let everybody know that the scoring is probably going to score low because we're not going to be protecting endangered species or endangered plants. And those are things that they look for. I have a methodology in the scoring that I'll share with every one of you to show you what they look for. I'm just trying to make you aware of the things that you can't do on that property as far as it being a park. It's not going to be your typical park. And even as far as a parking lot or material for a hiking trail, it's got to be natural material. There's so many restrictions to it. So not everything that's free is a good thing. It's worth exploring, but I'm just trying to make you aware of what is coming down the road, and the chances of it scoring high enough to get funded are slim.
How does
Appreciate all, sorry, Andrew. I appreciate, Cheryl. I think your input here is invaluable since you have that experience. And I don't know, I mean, it sounds dire almost, but some part of me just says $7,000 to the city for this prospect, maybe it's worth a shot in the dark, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I didn't know until tonight, the scoring on the grant being so, in your opinion, so low does put a damper on the enthusiasm factor. But I still think if the others on council are willing to push this forward, who knows? If we do get the grant, I'm all for using the park in that manner. I don't want to put baseball fields,
Right.
parking lots or anything like that. So that's okay. That doesn't bother me. And again, I'll just repeat what I've said several times. If the city can't come up with $7,000 for a prospect like this, then we're really hamstringing ourselves from what we can do. But I deeply appreciate the input you have on this because you're more than anybody else here.
Right. Yes.
And it sounds like parking in that area would be very limited since it has to be kept in its natural state.
Pretty much.
That's how it is in Kent at that one park. Is it? Oh my gosh, I just went blank. Like in between Brimfield. Yes, yeah. There's really not much parking. I think maybe like 6 cars at the most can actually park there. But it's just a nice scenic sometimes, to walk through there just to, be in nature.
I just a quick question. Do we have anything else that's similar to that if this were to be successful in the city?
I mean,
Is there any-
I think might be your closest comparable
Okay.
without the ball fields and, the playgrounds that are there. Really it's just the, I guess the small portion that's up front almost with the hiking trails.
Yeah.
Other than that, no. That I know of at least.
I wouldn't be against spending the $5,000 to $7,000 to do the appraisal. I would be interested if anyone would organize a walking tour of it to actually personally see what it looks like right now. We're early on, the weather's still pretty much okay. If we're going to pursue it, I'd like to go look at it with somebody directing our walk through it to see.
Right.
Yeah, Bob, is that something you might be able to organize, the small council field trip to Emerald Lake?
We would almost need
Absolutely.
trucks to get back there, I think.
What's that, Amy?
I said, I think we would need trucks to get back there. Cheryl's Jeep. I mean,
I'll throw everybody in the back of the truck. We'll be fine.
I'll take the top off. Everybody can stand in the back of the Jeep.
I think we can park at the end of Emerald Lake, the asphalt portion, and walk back.
Okay.
That sounds good.
What's the feeling of council moving this forward to see where we are? Mayor, can I ask your recommendation on this this ordinance specifically?
Well,
I have one question for Mr. Finney. Would that area be of an asset or not for water runoff going to the wastewater treatment plant?
The water would not make it to the wastewater treatment plant because it would have to go through 2 creeks and jump Hammond Almond Road before we get to the wastewater plant.
Okay, that's what I didn't know because I haven't been at that exact site firsthand to see those things, but thank you.
Mhm.
Well, Mayor, can I just ask you real quick, is this something you'd recommend?
I don't have a problem with moving this forward. I think that we have some questions that we need to get answered, but I don't have a problem with moving it forward.
Well, with that, it sounds like the majority want to move this forward. Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings on this issue or this ordinance?
So moved.
Second?
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Rob, second.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
No, I want to get more information, but no, not at this time.
Ms. Wood,
Yes, I'm okay with moving forward for an appraisal.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
No.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And then finally, do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
No.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted, and Cheryl, I appreciate your insight into all this, and I'm sure there's gonna be more questions moving forward as we explore the property. But it is, I think, a good opportunity for the city, so appreciate you all passing the ordinance tonight. So the next item on the agenda is the Menards ordinance number 2020-86.
An ordinance to grant a variance with riparian and wetland setback for Menards project and declaring an emergency.
And this is sponsored by Utilities, Mr. Moskin, or Mr. Finney. Do you want to take this?
Not really, but I will.
This isn't economic development.
Yep, this is me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
But it's okay, Bob can still have it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
This variance request is to build a gravel parking lot within the riparian setback as defined by the city's ordinances, which grants city council permission to grant a variance. And it's my opinion that a variance, if a variance is granted, that it will not directly affect the water species, the wetland areas, and it actually will provide more storage the way they would grade the site. So their area would become wetter actually as they store their vehicles, which helps downstream because they create storage on their property. That's not their intent, but that's what's going to happen.
And this is needed to move forward with the Menards project, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And I remember at the beginning of the process, Mr. Calfee pointing out this was a pretty small variance that we were granting, a little small portion of the property.
Correct. It's Right about 1 acre. It's affecting about 1 acre of the 65 acre site.
Was there any other questions on this? Well, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second,
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood. Ms. Wood,
Sorry, yes. I didn't realize mute was on.
And do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes. I said yes.
okay. Ms.
Can
Mi-
you hear me?
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And finally, do we have a motion to pass?
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
All right, that item is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-87.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to renew a contract with Quality IP for information technology services and declaring an emergency.
This is sponsored by IT. Ms. Wood?
Yes. So we've discussed this numerous times. The mayor has gotten it down to a 1-year agreement. And Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there was a 60-day requirement if we were not going to continue the contract with them. We would have had to have already notified them prior to this point, but
In this contract, that's the one I was reading this morning, that we have to notify them up to 60 days before the end of the contract, or it rolls over.
okay. And it's just a 1% increase from last year's contract.
It's almost identical. Just a tad.
Was there any other questions for Ms. Wood? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So move.
Yes.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Moskin? Mr. Moskin?
Yes. A little bit of reverb.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So move.
Second.
Second,
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
yes.
Mr. Kelfi?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And finally, a motion to pass.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, I repeated myself on the emergency clause, but let's do the motion to pass. Sorry.
I'm sorry, who was first, who was second?
I was first.
Nope, I think I was second.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Mr. Karas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-88.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of not to exceed $4,050,000 of bonds to refund certain outstanding bonds of the city which were issued to pay costs of constructing and installing a citywide energy conservation project, including any necessary appetances thereto, approving and authorizing related matters, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Calfee's favorite word, but this was sponsored by Finance. Mr. Huff?
Yes, I appreciate Amanda Gordon explaining this last week at committee, or the last committee meeting. This is really just taking advantage of our economic times right now, and while we're losing money on interest earned, we can certainly take advantage of refinancing a significant amount of bonds here. And as you guys saw in the attachments, there's a lot of savings to be had with this. So assuming something doesn't happen in the marketplace in the meantime, but yeah, I really appreciate you guys asking this tonight so we can start saving some money on these for the next 10, 12 years.
So this reissuance will save us a few $100,000. Is that correct over the long haul?
That's what it's projected to be, is unless something drastically changes in the marketplace. That's correct. Yeah, and if it doesn't pan out to be whatever reason, something crazy happens, then we don't have to do this. We're not stuck in doing this. We would pull out of it if the bids come in, you know, and for some reason not correct. But you know, current projections are, you know, there's between $200,000 and $300,000.
Sounds like it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Huff? Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Cares,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfie.
Appurtenances, yes.
I practiced earlier and I got it right. Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to waive or adopt the emergency clause? Adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfie,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And then finally, a motion to pass.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelfie,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted, and thank you, Brian, and the rest of the finance team too for looking into that ordinance and this next ordinance, which is ordinance number 2020-89.
An ordinance to appropriate the special revenue funds received from the CARES Act for coronavirus relief and declaring an emergency.
This is also sponsored by Finance, but I will turn it over to Mr. Huff.
Yes, so we kind of covered this one before. We actually have received all the funds for this. We've created a new fund in the accounting system. It's Fund 201, the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And the money is in there. It's $333,711.73. So this will just go ahead and appropriate the money. And we're still working on all the details on that. I've got some ideas. We'll probably coming to council at some point to share how we're going to show that money being spent within the parameters of the grants. But this is the first step to get it appropriated so we can do that.
Is there any questions for Mr. Huff? If there are none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfie,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And finally, do we have a motion to pass?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
All right, that item is adopted. That's everything for first reading of ordinances. Moving on to second reading of ordinances, we have ordinance number 2020-65.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the city of Ravenna, Title 8, Parking, Chapter 452, Parking generally, Section 452.21, Prohibited and restricted parking areas, subsection A, by prohibiting parking on both sides of Highland Avenue between Vine Street and Diamond Street at all times.
And this we've gone through. There is a public hearing that's scheduled for September 8th, I believe. So this will stay here for third reading. But with that, is there any old business to come before council? Or new business? And Mayor, do you have any remarks before we go into executive?
Just a couple of things by way of information. I did go to a couple of meetings last week, one at PMHA for Dr. Ben Carson, who's not the head of HUD, was there to do a roundtable with invited people that are involved with this. They were recognizing our local area for a special program that they're running for foster kids. These are kids that time out in foster homes and no longer eligible. And a lot of these kids end up homeless when that sort of thing happens. And they've developed a new program, put it together in 4 months in Washington, which Dr. Carson said was a minor miracle in itself. But they had two young adults there that were taking advantage of that situation and gone through all the paperwork and things that they needed to do to get that, as well as finding employment with that. But that was an interesting meeting, and I want to recognize Pam Calhoun for the fine job she does out there and helping with these kind of programs that help people. You saw in the newspaper that Johnson Matthey is closing. That's out on Freedom Street. Was the old Catskill. Johnson Matthey bought out Catskill, and Johnson Matthey is a firm that operates from England. That will be officially closed to the regular employees there on October 2nd, I believe. There'll be a few people raining behind to close the doors and what have you, and be totally closed on January 31st. They're inviting a few people to go to a plant in, I believe it's Savannah, where they're going to take this particular product down there. Johnson Matthey does a lot of work with energy. Of course, energy right now is not doing so well, no matter where they're at. So they are cutting their losses, so to speak, by reorganizing all over the world. So we're not the only ones that are affected by their decisions here. They are spending a good deal of money to try and relocate the people that work there into jobs. So from that standpoint, We hate to see this go. Ray Harner owns the facility and they rented from him. So Ray will be looking for a tenant to move into there. The other meeting I attended was a meeting at Prospect Street. It's sponsored by Black Lives Matter, but it was a town hall on the Ravenna schools. And Mr. Moncolo, along with other staff members, were there to talk about how they're going to open the schools and the sorts of things that they're looking at and getting feedback from parents to put the final plan together. Now that's a week old, and this changes daily for him, just like the pandemic does for us with that. So it's a moving target all the time. I will stop there and thank you.
I would just like to add that the school board approved the reopening plan tonight, and it will be published on the website tomorrow if anybody has any interest in looking at it.
Thanks, Matt. All right, well, with that, Mayor, can you just correct me? We're going to go into executive regarding personnel.
Actually, it's legal. Mr. Semino has asked for the
He's sitting right here, so I could have asked him too. So he just said legal issues with the city. So with that being said, for anybody watching, there will be no further votes tonight. The only action we'll take after this evening, so I don't have to go back live on YouTube, especially with all the issues I had at the beginning of this. The only motion that will happen after we come out of executive is to adjourn. So with that, do we have a motion to enter into executive session?
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi, Mr. Kelfi,
I'm sorry, yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
Everybody? Okay. Well, give me a second real quick. I want to make sure that we have disconnected from YouTube.